Hello, folks. Welcome back to our channel. And today I'm going to be reviewing another episode of Medium. And today I'm going to be reviewing the 19th episode of the third season called No One to Watch Over Me. No One to Watch Over Me, indeed. The episode was directed by Vincent Misiano and it was written by Travis Donnelly and Corey Reed, and the episode originally aired on April 25th, 2007. So in this episode, Allison has some rather strange, confusing dreams in which she basically sees herself out in the snow, and the snow that is very un, uh, uncommon for her because of the fact that she's living in Arizona, which, as far as I'm concerned, is not known for having snow ever. So basically, she keeps seeing some snow, and the snow is pretty symbolic. It's pretty symbolic in a way because it refers to basically, it has something to do with, well, you'll find out for yourselves. I don't want to spoil the episode for you or anything. But basically, at the beginning, she sees herself out in the snow. She's sleeping in her bed, but it's snowing around her. It's kind of beautiful. And she's basically feeling cold at the beginning. So it's pretty funny because she wants to, she's pulling the blanket over her over her body because she's cold. She's feeling cold. And then basically she sees herself out in the snow on her bed, lying on her bed, and it's snowing around her. It's beautiful. There's some beautiful music that is being played too. And then basically she's driving down the road and it's snowing around too. So basically after that, she ends up basically she ends up somewhere, and basically she's gonna make a shocking discovery at some point, right? As she's being led to her house, and basically there's something in then I don't want to spoil the episode, so I won't do it. But basically, there's gonna be something involving a freezer, right? And a freezer, and what happens after that is gonna be basically relevant to the episode itself, right? And basically, there's gonna be something involving a young woman named Haley, and basically something to do with what happened. Something pretty bad happened to her as they're basically investigating. Everyone is investigating, like the district attorney, and then you have Lee Scanlon. And yeah, it's looking pretty grim indeed. But then basically, Allison is, everything is gonna get a little more complicated, you might say, as this case is going to basically, according to Wikipedia, I'm quoting a little bit from there, but not too much, but basically, according to Wikipedia, I'm quoting, the case is going to get more complicated as Allison is going to basically be seeing that woman's I told you about Haley. She's gonna meet her younger sister named Jenny, who's basically played by she's basically played by Elizabeth Moss. And basically, there's something about that woman, and at some point it's gonna get pretty like physical, you might say. And it looks pretty strange because it is thought at some point that this woman, she basically, yeah, she should be a ghost. So, what's the deal, right? So, yeah, this is basically it for this episode, for the main plot. I don't remember very well what happened, so I'm basically telling you what I remember of it off the top of my head. I didn't take any notes. Maybe I should have. Maybe I should for the future. But yeah, But yeah, basically, this is how it goes. This is how the episode works. And I didn't tell you. Actually, I kind of messed up the last review a little bit. But basically, I told you that what was his name? Joe was back to his working place. Actually, I was wrong. It is in this episode. It is in this episode that he's back at his work to his workplace to his working place, and basically they're having the banner, they're welcoming him back, and so on. But it seems that he's not 100% right, as something like what happened, doesn't go away very easily. It stays in you, and it's pretty traumatic. So basically, at some point, his boss, he's afraid that he might have asked Joe to come too soon, to come back too soon. And Allison's going to try to talk to him, but he seems pretty distant. And at some point, he doesn't really talk to Allison. So there's a lot of tension in this episode regarding the what's happening at home. Also, Ariel, Ariel would like to go to camp for the summer with some of her friends, but basically it costs too much, so Joe has to break it to her, to break the news to her that it's not going to be a possibility. But then Ariel, basically, because of her gifts, her supernatural gifts she gets from her mother, she happens to know where some of the money that actually is supposed to help her through, help her pay through college, help her basically the money that they basically that money was basically a gift from her grandmother. Her grandmother basically was supposed to use it for college, but basically she happens to know about it and she would like to use this money for summer camp, but her father disagrees. So there's a lot of, yeah, you might say it's pretty tense at home between Joe and his daughter Ariel, and Joe and Allison in this episode. Yeah, they're kind of drifting apart a bit because of what happened the last time. Because of, the whole aftermath of the whole situation that took place at work. So yeah, this is basically it. So Allison is gonna try and, she's gonna try and face the situation, but she doesn't see a real problem at first. It seems that Joe is angry about Ariel, while Allison doesn't give it too much thought. She pretty much doesn't see it as a big deal. Whereas Joe really thinks that it's not that good what's happening, but then basically he becomes kind of distant. You might say he ends up sleeping on the couch and so on. So yeah, that's pretty much how it happens, right? Well, yeah. So basically, Allison is gonna be on her own pretty much. She's not gonna be talking much to Joe in this episode after what happened. So basically, at some point, she's feeling a little bit hurt because Joe hasn't asked her about her day. Something he regularly does. He regularly does, but not this time. So yeah, this is pretty much a tense time for the family. A difficult time. But yeah, Allison is basically gonna figure everything out about this woman, and yeah, at some point she goes to the house to try and find some clues, and this is when she basically she's I'm not gonna spoil it, the episode I mean, but basically something happens to her and then she becomes convinced that things are not exactly the way they seem. And then she has more dreams and she ends up finding out what really happened and how everything can be basically solved, right? So this is basically it for this episode. Now, what did I think about this episode? I thought this episode was pretty good. And really, really good. Like the plot itself was good, but what really was, I believe, the main thing about this episode was what happened. Is what happens at in the house, right, with the family, with Allison and her husband and their daughter. I believe That's the main thing about this episode, as far as I'm concerned. Was the plot about the case was pretty great too. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, this is basically more of a family episode, I would say, because of what's happening with Joe and so on. But yeah, this is a good episode, right? So now let's move on to the characters very quick. So we have Robert Neary, who plays Peter Barbera. Then we have Elizabeth Moss, who plays Jenny. Jerry Becker. Jerry Becker plays Marcus Canty. Then we have Marcus Canty. Then we have Kimberly Scott, who plays Coroner. Then we have Adrian Sparks, who plays the manager. Then we have Kate McGregor Stewart, who plays landlady. Then we have Ruben Gorfius, who plays pawn shop owner. Then we have Karis Dorsey, who plays young Jenny. Karis Dorsey plays young Jenny. Karis Dorsey plays young Jenny. Then we have Miranda Carabillo, who plays Marie. And finally, James Chiarillo plays James Chiarillo plays coworker number one. So yeah, this episode was pretty good. Not that, like, the plot itself was good, but I didn't love it that much. So what happens with the family was pretty great. In this episode, I gotta say, a little tension, a little unrest in the household was pretty good. So if I were to rate this episode, and it's not something you get to see every day, because usually Allison and Joe, even if they have their their problems at home, it's basically, everything is basically back to normal by the end of the episode. But this time, it seems that sadly Allison wakes up and her husband is not lying near her on his side of the bed, trying to come up with a funny with trying to come up with something funny. Sadly, he's not really here to support her this time, so it hurts a little, right? For us and for Allison and for the viewers, because, it's like we're all a big family in a way, us viewers and the characters. But yeah, that was good in a way to introduce that, unrest, that feeling of unrest in this episode. So if I were to rate this episode on a scale from 1 to 10, I think I would give it a 7.5 out of 10. 7.5 out of 10 was a good episode. Not awesome, but good nonetheless. So I'd give it a 7.5 out of 10. 7.5 out of 10 for this episode. 7.5. 7.5 out of 10 for this episode. 7.5 out of 10 for this episode. What about you, folks? What do you think about this episode? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Let me know in the comment section down below. We'd really love to hear about your thoughts and views on this episode. In the meantime, folks, stay safe. Goodbye. Take care. I'll see you in the next review for another episode, God willing. In the meantime, stay safe. Goodbye. Take care. This whole channel for you, signing off.